Hello and welcome to Policy Watch, your packed snapshot of the week's biggest business stories, their context, their relevance and policy impact. I'm Govindraj, Ethiraj. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reshuffled and expanded his cabinet. There are no major changes in the economic ministries except for the movement of Jayant Sinha, Minister of State for Finance, to Aviation, and the addition of Mines to Coal and Power Minister Piyush Goyal's portfolio. Ahead of the reshuffle, Mr. Modi had said that the moves were aimed at reflecting the focus and priorities of the Union Budget 2016 unveiled in end February. He also spoke of expeditious clearance of office files, ease of doing business, reduced time for cabinet note finalization, and government no longer working in silos. The question we are asking is, to what extent does this reshuffle reflect those priorities? More importantly, what can be achieved, and what is the economic agenda ahead, given the new and fortified Council of Ministers? To discuss this, I am joined by G. Chokkalingam of Equinox Securities and Anjali Verma, Economist at Phillip Capital. Thank you both for joining us. Chokka, let me begin with you. So markets were still recovering from Brexit in a manner that actually quite surprised us all, because they've more than recovered from Brexit and they've actually almost moved into bull territory. What is the impact, or has been the impact, of the cabinet reshuffle?
It is too early. I mean, it's only hope that the new cabinet ministers would deliver. But if you look at the last 1.5 years, it was very clear to many that the road ministry has delivered something. The power ministry, for instance, there used to be a lot of shortage of coal. Today they are talking of surplus coal. In fact, Coal India is planning to cut down the output. So 2-3 ministries have done phenomenally well, and in fact that is also getting reflected in economic parameters. I am pleased to see the data point that April, May, first 2 months of the current fiscal, the planned expenditures have gone up by 46%, whereas the whole budget is targeted around 15 to 16. So if we can find 3 more ministers who can deliver, if not all, I think India's story would certainly kick in a big way in the stock market.
But is the reshuffle giving you that hope?
I mean, it's very early to,
Okay. I mean, from an economic ministry's point of view, to pick up on what you said, I think what we've only seen is the addition of a ministry to Piyush Goyal, and we've also seen, but importantly, communications being split from electronics and information technology.
Yeah, definitely there must be reason behind it, because not all the ministers were performing the way that some of the ministers were aggressively doing it. I mean, I'm pleased to see in the road minister having everything in his fingertips in terms of numbers, like a stock market analyst. So if we can reproduce more ministers like him, and then future is going to be very robust.
Right, but for some reason the market reacted negatively to the spinning off of the Ministry of Communication. Why is that?
No, I think in my view,
HCL Tech, TCS, Infosys, all shares were down by 2%.
In my view, the market is completely ignored it. These stocks have fallen because of the Brexit. Because the currency hit 31-year low, so which is going to give a lot of uncertainty for the IT stocks. So otherwise, I think market has no reason to run up because of the new faces.
Anjali, what's your sense? I mean, if you were to look at the moves as an aggregate, and the reshuffled cabinet today, does it give you a sense that the economic priorities continue to be at the forefront as they were earlier, or as the Prime Minister said they were?
Yes, absolutely. I think we are reading too much into the reshuffle that has happened. I mean, if we talk about Smriti Irani moving from HRD to textiles, I think one should look at it in a positive manner. Apart from the political, mind game that has been applied to it, if we look at it from the economic point of view, then I don't see any, adverse movements or all of this having any adverse impact on the, economic developments. I think it is very clear that this government is largely focused on macro development, rural development, urban development. So all the announcements that they've been making for last a month, largely after Brexit, are quite supportive of economic growth, and eventually it should reflect in the numbers.
So Anjali, could you use an example to illustrate what you're saying? I mean, for instance, one could have been that the addition of mines to the portfolio of power and energy is power, coal and energy obviously gives it composite focus, and therefore our India's energy situation is looking a little more under control.
Absolutely. If we look at, we've seen significant developments on the road front. Railways is, faring okay, if not, extremely impressive. Then energy, coal, we have seen, a reasonable improvement, not only in the policy announcements as well as, actual real data. We have seen, production data improving substantially. Electricity output is growing, on an average around 8% plus for the last couple of years. And I would attribute it to the, the policy decisions or the administrative decisions that have been taken by the current government. If you look at even in terms of coal production, coal production is surpassing the demand. So of course we have demand which is still slack, and it'll take some time for it to improve. But all in all, I think power, coal, and now mining, it should bode pretty well for the economy, I would say.
Okay, so Chokka, the other concern some people would have, and including in the markets, I'm sure, is that somewhere as the government reaches midway, the election becomes a focus. For instance, Uttar Pradesh elections, which is legislative elections coming up next year. One is whether or not some of the reshuffle moves were aimed at that direction, but that being put aside, would that be a concern that this government may become election focused?
No, it's not at all concern. It is only for the traders. Prior to this government, for 20 years we had a minority government without stability. Still the Indian market hit all-time highs. And even look at the recent elections, Tamil Nadu, Bihar, what happened to the market? So people unnecessarily become nervous and react. So here you have to understand the fact that the present government has got 2/3 majority at the center. In the Rajya Sabha also in the next 2 years it is going to get the majority. So therefore there is no need to worry at all about this 1 or 2 states election being held.
Okay. So if I were to ask you to keep the politics aside, what is then driving the Indian markets, and therefore what could be the Indian markets looking out for in terms of cues in coming months?
Certainly. There could be a lot of debate on the GDP growth, but certainly even if you downgrade the GDP growth, still we are one of the fastest growing. And second, what I have been saying all along, India is a unique country. It gains out of the global pain. That was proved post Lehman crisis. Now also it is proved. Now again you see last 4 days there is a renewed concern on Brexit. Again the oil came below $47. So this maximum gain which no other country gets. And third, to be very fair, in the last 2 years the things have improved. Indirect tax collections have grown at 48%. FDI flows are more than 30%. Growing, and forex reserves at record level, and even after netting out $20 billion of FCNRB repayment, you are going to have a very robust inflows, and even the reforms. You are seeing the FDI reforms, insurance reforms, and then initiatives like, for instance, apart from smart city projects, we saw a couple of days back oil and gas sector proposing 30 billion investment in the largest refinery in India. If this kind of initiatives happen with the help of government and PSUs, India story will become phenomenal. We already outperformed most of the major markets, whether you take last year, 1 year, or last 1 quarter. This can continue if new ministers take up more initiatives.
Right. Okay, Anjali, so let me flip the question around and ask you what lies ahead in terms of unfinished agenda. I mean, what are the areas, assuming this government and this cabinet is well fortified, well entrenched and positioned to take on some big challenges, what should they be?
See, I think like all of us know, the biggest one and the closest one is GST. If that can be cleared in monsoon session, as government is claiming that they have got political consensus in their favor, if that is cleared, I think it's going to be a big boom in the sense from the stock market point of view. In terms of the macro impact and the corporate impact, it's going to take much longer. So I don't see it's going to have a significant positive delta in terms of the GDP or in terms of IIP or even in terms of the corporate earnings. But yeah, from the macro, from the market's point of view, it's going to be a huge positive. Apart from that, as long as there is continuity in the policy that government is following, the governor matter, at the RBI is reasonably handled, and that part becomes stable. Because I think after that, when the new governor joins RBI, currency will be closer to large volatility because of FCNRB outflows, and that is also the time when Brexit impact or implementation could come in the picture. So I think currency will be a big risk around that time, and Dr. Rajan not being around could have some adverse impact on the currency. So all that will have to be also handled by the RBI along with the government, and of course we'll have to see what incrementally happens on the banking sector. The current governor, RBI along with the government had tried to sort out the matter of the NPAs which are rising. So we'll have to see if there is continuity on that front. What is the incremental announcement that comes over there, because that is one area where I think there are still a lot of issues that are yet to be addressed.
At a fair point there. So there was a certain momentum momentum in place in terms of a crackdown on particularly on PSU banks, asking them to clean up their balance sheets, and all the problems sort of emerging out in the open in terms of non-performing assets. Will we see the continuation of that momentum is the question?
Certainly not, and I do not agree personally with that kind of cleanup. I have been always saying that if a person has got a tuberculosis phase 3, that is not that stage to make him follow the dieting and reduce his intake.
Okay. So you have a counter view on that?
Yeah, definitely. It is a wrong time because now I can prove the point. Now look at the PSU banks. Half of the banks are degrowing the business because of this erosion in the network. The lending capability has been hit. Even the lack of confidence. Now, if you look at the March quarter, half of the PSU banks have degrowth in the credit year on year, and even the other banks which are growing, only 2 banks could grow at double digit. The rest are all.
But if the assets were non-performing to start with, where would the growth come from?
No, what I am saying, by forcing this asset quality recognition, you have forced them to report a huge losses. So that has dismantled the confidence of even the depositors. There are many middle class deposits are shifting away from the PSU banks to the large private sector banks. And second, your net worth has come down. So
you're saying that this has already begun happening? People moving deposits?
The numbers are visible. You look at the December quarter and March quarter and contrast with any other quarter, any time period. Even you see, take 2002-03 where we had a PSU banks severe crisis. So this is the worst phase for the business also. So my point is that.
Okay, so you're saying you're a more gentle handling of the PSU.
Certainly. At a good time you squeeze them, not at a bad time.
Okay, right. So Anjali, last word, your outlook and expectation ahead.
See, on the macro data, I mean, it still remains quite disappointing. Even the IIP data or the inflation data that is expected to come for the month of June is expected to be adverse. Just to highlight, CPI for the month of June could be inching towards 6%, which is a much higher number than what RBI or any one of us were anticipating earlier. IIP is expected to remain in negative zone. Core sector has anyways been disappointing. So, I mean, it is still a disappointing set of macro data, barring, I would say, GDP number, which anyways is questionable. And of course, one believable number is the direct as well as indirect tax growth. But again, over there, we've the jump can also be attributed to higher tax rates. So from the macro point of view, I think picture is still quite mixed, I would say, or muted. Incrementally, we still hope for improvement, but yeah, I mean, it is still looking far-fetched.
Therefore, this reshuffled and fortified cabinet has a lot of work ahead of itself. We need to go in for a break now. We've run out of time. On the other side, we look at the new textile package and a potential new textile policy. Stay with us. Welcome back to Policy Watch. Now, this industry provides direct and indirect jobs to 4.5 crore or 45 million people and has the opportunity to create another 10 crores or 100 million jobs in 10 years. India's textile industry has revenues of $100 billion, of which almost a third comes from exports. A new textile policy is in the offing and the government has already announced a 6,000 crore rupee textiles package aimed at providing flexibility in labour laws amongst other steps. Now, following a cabinet reshuffle, there is a new minister, Smriti Irani, at the helm as well. With textiles poised to play a very important role in both job creation and economic growth for the country, the question we are asking is, what are the key challenges ahead? How can India recover ground lost to neighbouring countries? To discuss that, I am joined by Prem, Malik, immediate past chairman of the Confederation of Indian Textile Industry, and Rahul, Mehta, president of the Clothing Manufacturers Association of India. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me. Let me start with you, Mr. Malik. So, if you were to look at the new context, which is you have a textile policy in the offing, there's been a package announced. The package has been welcomed quite widely, even by people who were earlier critics of many of the government's economic steps. What's the sense? Where do you think we stand?
I think the package is a very good package. There's a lot of enthusiasm because the steps which have been taken are in the very right direction.
Okay.
All the important.
What are the steps that stand out to you?
See, one is basically that as far as the exports are concerned, so far the taxes were being exported. This is the first time the government of India has acknowledged and has said that the state subsidies, state levies which are not being reimbursed will be reimbursed. So that's a step forward. The second is the flexibility of operations is another big step forward because government is not a 12 months, it's a seasonal kind of a thing. So you need employment at peaks very high and then lows. So that has been acknowledged by the government.
Okay.
The third is basically the labor laws in terms of overtime and all that. So that has also been acknowledged. So they are fundamentally very good, and then increasing the employment, which is the major objective of the government. And this is one industry which can offer and is already the second largest employer after agriculture, and now has the potential to give, say, another 2.5 million jobs in next 10 years. So I think it's a sector which need to be looked at. And favorably, government has looked at very well. And I congratulate the government that they have gone as far as the apparel is concerned. But I think they have to go a long way forward.
Rahul, let me put a question to you. So, one of the big concerns for India and maybe the government and clothing industry has been the loss of business to countries like Bangladesh, Vietnam, China, of course. Now, is this something that we can actually get back given all these steps, or we still have a very daunting task ahead?
Well, I think these initiatives which have been announced by the government will go a very long way in addressing some of the issues which were making us uncompetitive. Obviously, there are other issues still left. For example, the import duty benefits that countries like Bangladesh enjoy, the FTA that with EU and other countries that we are hoping to get, the cost of bank interest. So these are issues, but I think by and large the government has done a fantastic job in trying to reduce these anomalies and the uncompetitiveness factors that we were facing. And I am personally quite hopeful and confident that the industry will respond in terms of additional investment into the industry, additional employment, and with these factors, I think we should be in a position to retrieve our lost position to these countries.
So we do have a new textile minister. So assuming that some of these issues need to be pushed forth with a strong administrative hand, where would you suggest, or where do you think the focus should first be?
Well, I think the immediate focus should be on putting up more factories, and perhaps larger factories than we have been doing so far. One of the factors, characteristics of our industry has been the very small sized units and factories that most of us put up, essentially out of the inflexible labor laws. Now that has been addressed to some extent, to a large extent I would say, and therefore these should encourage us to put up much larger factories, and that is obviously going to make us a little more competitive, and it is going to increase employment. So I think that should be the first focus. Having said that, we will also need to expand into more markets, be more aggressive about our marketing, and get into the non-traditional products. I have always said that India is too focused on the cotton-based summer season products, and we have already captured a fair amount of share, international share in this particular segment. We now need to get on to winter clothing, we need to get on to specialty clothing, we need to get on to man-made fabrics, and again some of the changes that the government is proposing, which is duty drawback on the domestic portion of the product which uses imported fabrics. I think that will go a long way in encouraging the industry to get into these non-traditional products.
Okay, so Mr. Malik, so one of the factors, I was reading this Boston Consulting report, the authors are from Boston Consulting, there's a 15% cost gap for India between other markets, particularly again Bangladesh, Vietnam, and there's also a time gap. There's a 3 to 4 week time gap, as I understand, between, let's say, India and then Vietnam and China, because they're able to ensure that their goods reach faster. Now, these are these disadvantages that can be conquered, and what will it take? Because it's not just a textile ministry problem; it's a larger problem, I assume.
See, there are two basic issues involved in this. One is basically why they are more competitive. So they have kind of because Bangladesh is least developed country. So in terms of Europe, they are getting 10% advantage, 10 to 12% in terms of duty difference. So tariff advantage is there. So to that extent, we become uncompetitive. The second is logistically, we are slightly not as strong as we should be. So there are infrastructure bottlenecks, which also the government is looking at it. Hopefully that will also be resolved. But these are the bottlenecks which need to be taken care of through the various FTAs and all that the government must
which
do.
Which we've argued in the past as well. Right, but a critical point that Rahul has mentioned as well is scale. Right? No, is the industry today, and obviously investment has to come from the private sector and government can only direct, is the industry today ready financially or otherwise to take on this challenge of building much larger scale plants, and is there also more importantly viability?
See, basically what has to be seen is that not only the garment industry alone can achieve what is intended to be achieved, because there is a back end. So what government needs to do is, as I said, they've done a very good job in terms of announcement of this package. But this package, without taking the balance value chain into it, this will not succeed.
Okay.
Because you need to strengthen the rest. You need to have a good quality fibers. You have to have good spinning, good weaving, good finishing, and good garmenting. All have to work together.
Right. So, the textile secretary, Rashmi Verma, she was saying that we do about $11 billion of fiber, but only $3.6 billion of garments. So, that's the potential value addition opportunity that lies. But we are currently, for the reasons I'm assuming you already mentioned, are not able to take advantage of.
That's right.
Right. So, how do we then, go towards scale, which I'm assuming is the solution to many of our problems?
You see, if you want to go to scale, then you have to have the scale in terms of the manufacturing in the textile sector. Because ultimately, any garment manufacturer will also need fabrics. So you have to strengthen the fabric sector as well. So without the back end, you will not be able to totally do what you want to do in the front end. So first step has been taken, which is very right step the government has taken. Now government has to look at the second step. Now the second thing which was also said earlier is basically with regard to that we are focused purely on one, which is cotton. We have to really look at the other fibers. Now why the other fibers we are not able to compete? That's a major thing. Basically there is a heavy duty on polyesters, viscose and various other man-made fiber. So that has to be taken care of also by the government to see that the fiber is available at a competitive price.
Right. Okay, Rahul, let me come back on the question of scale to you. So, this industry has been used to working in a certain way, small units, spread out, dispersed, and an entire logistics and supply chain really driven by and built on that. Is this industry in a position to change now to grab these opportunities?
Well, as I said, the first few steps have been taken. There have been additional subsidies announced on the machinery part. The fear of inflexible labor laws, I think, has been addressed to some extent. So I think this is definitely providing an impetus to the entrepreneurs and to the garment manufacturers to expand and to build up larger scale factories. There will be certain, any industry that you take or most of them will have the small scale sector, the middle scale sector and the large scale sector. But so far the entrepreneurs were deliberately trying to stay away from the large scale sector, which I think this policy will go a long way to encourage us to do so. But I absolutely agree with Malik Saab that the complete package for the entire value chain will still be needed if we have to increase our scale, because ultimately you build larger factories, you build larger scale, you also need larger inputs of raw materials, of which fabric is one of the main materials. So I think the first steps have been taken. A few more need to be taken to round it up, and I think you will see a fair amount of additional new large-scale factories coming up in the country.
That's an encouraging note, Rahul. And last question, Mr. Malik, if there's, and we've really got 30 seconds now. So the one thing that the new textile ministry should be looking at first.
The first important thing which I just said is that they have to really look at now at the back end.
Okay. Okay, so you're saying the garments or the front end is taken care of. It's really the back end and the supply or the part that feeds into the garment industry that needs to be looked at.
That's it.
Right. Thank you very much. We've run out of time. That's all we have time for on this edition of Policy Watch. We'll be back next week, same time. Thanks for watching.